would you take with you into an underground bunker to avoid climate collapse? Who would you bring with you? Or is running away into a bunker all just a way to escape reality? These are the questions we'll be asking as we talk you through The End.
The End is an apocalyptic musical set in one family's luxurious bunker in an underground salt mine, telling the story of what it's like to avoid the worst impacts of climate change and what it means to leave the world behind.
Hot take?
I don't know if you agree with this, but I think George Mackay should have been nominated for an Oscar for this.
My hot take is that Letterboxd and Rotten Tomato reviewers are wrong about this film because they have given it quite a low rating.
I don't think that's that hot of a take.
So we're quite excited about this episode because we were very kindly invited by Think Film and Mubi to a private screening of The End before it was released here in the UK. And we had a lovely time and obviously got to watch this really exciting new release.
Alongside the screening, there was also a Q&A with the director Joshua Oppenheimer, the son, George Mackay, and the cinematographer Mikhail Kriegman.
We hope that's how you pronounce your name.
Yeah, I apologise if we butchered that, but the Q&A really did add a lot to this film.
Yeah, we'll get more onto that in a bit, but really grateful for their insight into the movie, especially after just watching it. I kind of wish other people would have that experience.
And if you are interested, please do search out the director on YouTube and just hear him talk, because he was very eloquent with his words and very interesting.
Very eloquent indeed.
Okay, so we're going to break down the plot now.
Warning that this might be this is probably going to be a fairly spoiler heavy episode. I think just obviously if you're in the UK, it's literally just come out today at the time that we're releasing this. So
go watch it first.
Yeah, go watch it. Go to cinema. Maybe even go to one of the Mubi Q&A events if you can, because as we just said, highly recommend.
So the film is set in a post-climate apocalyptic future where an American family is living underground in a salt mine.
Yes, a salt mine. A real salt mine. It was actually filmed in one in Italy, which is pretty impressive. I was watching it thinking, is this a real set?
Yeah, they did a very good job of making it look real because it was real. While outside, the world is burning.
Yeah, and the climate crisis continues. People are living in brutal conditions. We don't really see it in the film, but we are aware of what's going on.
The son, who's the main character in this film, has grown up in the bunk all of his life. I think he's 25 years old. I think it mentions in the film that they've been in the bunker for 25 years. And he doesn't know any different from living in a bunker.
We also come to learn the kind of history and backstory of the family. And we come to know that the father is a former oil tycoon. And that is kind of one of the ways that we learn about the context of climate in this film, because we learn how him and his company impacted the climate.
It does this through his son writing a book of him, like a biography, which has a very skewed perspective of what his life actually was.
One of the things that Joshua Oppenheimer spoke about during the kind of Q&A was about the inspiration for this film and why he decided to choose the story of living in a bunker. And it turned out that after creating his previous documentaries, he actually ended up connecting with an oil tycoon and learned of the fact that this person was actually building a bunker of his own and was doing exactly what the characters in this film do, making a plan so that when the worst comes to the worst, they have a safe place to go and they have a place to put all of their nice belongings and to shut themselves off from the world. And yeah, very fascinating to realise that this is a very real thing that's happening now in the world for the rich and wealthy.
But I wouldn't say it's surprising because we know that Mark Zuckerberg has also built a bunker. I'm sure all the other oligarchs that are mentioned in the media quite a lot have bunkers everywhere. This film is a climate film, would you agree?
Absolutely. I think the storyline of the dad being an oil man and talking about the consequences of that makes that very, very clear.
But I feel like it's more so about human nature and the lies we tell ourselves to get through the day.
Yes. And actually, that was why I was really, I found listening to the director really beneficial to my understanding of the movie. I went in kind of not knowing an awful lot about it. I knew it was a musical about the end of the world, but I wasn't sure what I was going to take from that. And yeah, it became not only clear from just watching it and the way that the film kind of builds a sense of denial and avoidance throughout in different ways, but also, just from hearing him speak and kind of realizing, oh, this isn't just about the climate crisis, it's about what we do now and what we'll do in the future to kind of grapple with it as humans.
Yeah, like the bunker, although it is physically there in the film, it's also about how the audience builds bunkers in their mind and in their daily lives to avoid the reality that we are facing.
But it's not necessarily about climate denial and not believing in it. As we know through the dad, he knew what he was doing. He knew the reality of the climate crisis. And by buying bunkers, these rich people know it's happening.
Yeah, even the dad even says, he wasn't one of the bad ones. He wasn't the worst person to do what he did. And he was doing it in his mind to help people.
There is this knowledge. It's more, this really bad thing is happening. This really big bad thing has happened. This really bad thing we've done, which is, leaving the world behind, leaving people, leaving your families behind. And also with the dad kind of dealing with what it means to now be oh, that was me.
It's interesting in the film that there is a doctor in the bunker. I feel like he wasn't there to look after them so much, but to prescribe them the drugs that they need to be able to live the life they're living. They need these drugs to sleep because they have all these nightmares, because they've left behind a life, they've left behind families, they don't know how to deal with it. Because how would you deal with it, leaving behind your nephew or, spoilers alert, your son?
In the film, as you said, we have the mum, the dad, the son, the doctor, and then the mum's best friend. And that's it.
And the girl.
And the girl who we end up meeting not too far into the start of the film, who finds her way into the bunker. That's kind of the big question, is how do you deal with knowing all of that is going on and live with yourself and live with the knowledge that you didn't help others? I found it really clever how it built that sense of denial and avoidance in different ways, whether it was through George Mackay's really good portrayal of his son being really innocent and acting in this way as if we were living normal life now.
Yeah, but I think also, because it's the age that we are, I feel like we also play a role in, we know the world is bad, but sometimes we just don't acknowledge it. But now more people are acknowledging this and questioning the systems that we live in. They are no longer saying, oh, I like the status quo. They are going against their parents. They're going against the systems that rule them, like he does later on in the film when he questions his dad and says, I know you're lying. I can't keep on lying for you.
Yeah, the parents are another way that this film creates a really great sense of denial and avoidance, is that they are just trying to live as kind of life as normal. The way the mum is always trying to make the house look orderly and correct, when if you were to just go outside the bunker, the world is in ruin and the complete opposite. It's the kind of underlying knowledge that what's going on in the bunker is so contrasting to what's outside. I don't know, it was very well done how they did that without explicitly saying it or explicitly showing the outside world.
Yeah, and the fact that the son still has to live his life by these kind of capitalistic values where he has to be productive, he's working for his mum, he's got a watch on his wrist and he's saying there's too little time and he has to do everything in that day because that's what he's taught to be in this kind of capitalist world where there is not enough time to do everything and your time is valued.
Yeah, and also he speaks to the girl about how you want to make money and keep time like a billionaire, and it's you're in an underground bunker where there is essentially no hope for you and you're having to live this way. The fact that the parents have instilled that in him is really bizarre. It just creates that sense of this is really odd to be acting this way when the world is the way it is.
The film really gets started when the girl sort of falls into their bunker, and we don't know where she comes from, and they're having this decision whether they should keep her or not. They decide that they want to get rid of her after helping her heal and send her on the way. And then they sort of have a crisis of humanity and think, well, actually, we can't do this, even though they've never let anyone else in. And then that sort of brings through the thread of the film about bringing other people or not bringing other people into the bunker when they first joined. Like, the mother wasn't able to bring her sister, who she's really close with, or her family. And that sort of breaks the mother. And I'm sure that is one of the reasons why she is like she is. And then the girl, as she kind of grows with this family, she has small breakdowns about what her life was on the outside. She is the real humanity in this film. Like, she says she is the reason her family died, because she crossed the river without them. And it's a really interesting arc that this character has, from being our window into the humanity of the people outside to then, over the course of the film, becoming just as delusional as the family, because that's the only way that she can cope with the fact that her family are not with her. One thing I did question was the motive of both the father's friend and the mother's friend. Why did they go into the bunker and continue to work for these people? Or like, they're living with them, but they are help essentially to the rich people.
I wonder if that's because that's how they would have been in the outside world, so it's their only real way of like maintaining some semblance of normality.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I just can't see myself in that position going into the bunker with them and saying goodbye to my family, saying goodbye to my friends, and just saying sort of, I'm giving up on you. I'm going to live my life in this bunker and live there for 25 years.
Yeah, and to not have kind of like dismantled any sense of like hierarchy is kind of wild.
Yeah, because they're still, like I said, they're still working for them. They're not being paid because there's no money. So what is the value there? Are they living with them so that they can survive? And if so, what is the reasoning for them to survive? Like, you've survived, but now what? You're too afraid to go outside and see the world for what it is now. So what life are you living? Like, what is the end goal?
Yeah, well, that's one of the big questions, isn't it? And actually, I think the mum, played by Tilda Swinton, she has a song about that, which kind of talks about, I can't remember the exact lyrics, but it talks about kind of the idea of like, if the world's going to end, as long as like I've loved you, then that's enough. And I think that is kind of a question, is like, what is actually, especially if you're building a bunker for survival, what are you putting in it that makes life worth living for? And like, how are you going to build your life? Like, what is life about, essentially? That is the question.
Yeah, and I think what the mother values most is the art that she had in the outside world, or maybe she didn't have, but she chose to keep or protect from the fires that are burning outside.
Yeah, this film is heavy on the art, whether that is the film itself and how beautifully it's shot and the music throughout, or whether it is the decoration that they've put in this bunker and the collections that they've made. I think it's really important that that's kind of an undercurrent, because I think it highlights, like, despite everything, art is so valuable in our lives, even when the world is crumbling.
Yeah, and even when the government is telling us like art is not worth saving, be it through cutting like art programs in schools or funding for films like this.
It actually makes me think of Just Stop Oil and how they have used art and our appreciation for art in order to make headlines with protests, you know, throwing what looks like orange paint onto famous paintings like the sunflowers. It goes to show that people will have outrage over art being potentially destroyed rather than the planet being destroyed. I think art and climate have become conjoined because of like actions like that being taken.
Yeah, and the film starts with a very poignant quote from T.S. Eliot from the Four Quartets, which is, "The houses are all gone under the sea, the dancers are all gone under the hill. And I think that really sets the tone for the film. So clearly art is important in this film, but it's also important in your life, Tolly, as an artist. Is there a particular piece that you would save?
Yes, I do have an answer, actually. I think I would save The Birth of Venus by Botticelli. I have a real soft spot for it. I just think it is truly a really, really beautiful painting, and I like, for its time as well, I just find it amazing that we have that kind of beautiful piece of art that's been preserved for so long. And seeing it in person, I've seen it a couple of times, and just always like fills me with just nice feelings. Like, it's just really nice to look at. And yeah, if I could save one, it would be that, and as well as just other Botticelli paintings in general. Jake, what art would you save? And there's only one real right answer.
All of your art, of course.
Thank you. Right, you got the brownie points for being a good boyfriend.
So, speaking of art, the dad is also writing a book, a biography that he hopes someone will read one day.
He sure is, with the help of his son, as we mentioned.
Yeah, so his son is writing a book, a kind of revisionist history of his dad's life based on articles and stories that he is being told from his dad's perspective.
Throughout this kind of like book writing process, we see the dad like talk about his past. So he kind of says like, I was in the energy business. I guess I made a difference. He even has the audacity to say like, I hope somebody will read it, which I think made the audience laugh in the cinema, because it's like, what? Of course someone's going to read your stupid book. And says things like, it would be, it's sheer arrogance to think we would change the fate of our planet, when he was literally an oil man who could have changed the fate of our planet.
But I think he does think that he changed the fate of our planet, but for good, because he talks about how he fueled people's cars, he fueled people needed him to survive and to thrive in the world. So I think he sees himself as more of a good guy than, the sheer arrogance to think we changed the fate of our planet by drilling fossil fuels is not the one. He didn't say that in a way like, I've caused climate change. I think he meant.
Yeah, and that's very much like oil industry propaganda, to be like, we can't live without oil. Every part of your life is because of us.
Yeah, they really like to say that. I mean, if you listen to our one of our episodes on Landman, there's a whole spiel about how, they need us, they want us, they love us.
You literally can't live without us. And it's like, yeah, we can actually.
But also we can't, because the world they built around us
makes it very tricky to avoid them.
Exactly.
I've actually just remembered a real life example of seeing this fossil fuel delusion in real life. I once confronted the Shell brand CEO at Cannes Lions, which is the world's biggest advertising festival. It's hosted in the same place as the Cannes Film Festival, which is very relevant to the podcast. And I questioned him over Shell's responsibility for harming communities in Nigeria. This was a panel about female empowerment, and I wanted to talk about how Shell were basically doing the opposite of female empowerment by harming women farmers in these communities with oil spills and all sorts of other bad behaviour from Shell. His response, which actually we might even be able to include here as an audio clip.
I came here to talk about female empowerment in advertising and what we're trying to do. And I'm happy to have a conversation about what we do for the future of energy. As a father of 5 children, I care deeply about what happens to this planet, and that's why I joined Shell.
That was his response. That is a real CEO from Shell, and a very real delusion of the fact that he thinks he is doing good by working for a company that is destroying the planet for the very children he is speaking about. And that feels very reminiscent of the delusion that Michael Shannon's character is living with. I will never forget that moment for the rest of my life. It felt like being sucker punched. So something that Joshua Oppenheimer spoke about when we were there at the screening was this kind of like, he didn't want to make things too polarizing. He wanted to keep the humanity within all of the characters, including the dad, who has this like terrible history of being an oil man.
But I think the dad comes off as a lovable, kind of caring character. He's the one that wants to let the girl into the bunker in the beginning of the film. It's the mum that doesn't want her in.
As someone who spends their whole life hating on fossil fuel companies and has taken action against, people who collude with the fossil fuel industry, I definitely found it a little bit difficult to just sit and be okay with that kind of humanization of that character. Did you?
I did, but I think that the filmmaker wanted to kind of show the humanity in everyone, and so that even if he's one of the worst people that you meet, he still has human characteristics that you can identify in yourself, because the filmmaker wanted this film to be a sort of a mirror that you hold up against yourself and identify yourself within. So if Michael Shannon's character, the father, was such a terrible person, you wouldn't be able to see yourself in him. One of the main goals the director spoke about of this film was to kind of get people to identify themselves within these characters, so that they look at themselves and think, oh, maybe I have done wrong. Maybe I should atone for that, because we don't want to be in this world where we are living in bunkers. Maybe I should change.
Being the type of person I am, I don't want people to let them slide and be like, well, they're just human. They're making these decisions because they're human and they're doing the best they can and blah, blah, blah. But yes, it is a valuable perspective. And also, on the mirror front, it is the second film that we have watched where the characters don't have specific names. They are left with no names so that we can kind of fill in the blanks and, like you say, put our own kind of ideas onto these characters. The End We Start From, which we will be covering in a future episode, also does this, and I find it a very interesting concept.
I think they do that because the climate crisis will affect everyone.
I wonder if it will become like a climate film trope, the no-name trope.
I feel like it will do. But back to the point about, demonizing the dad, this is something that comes up over and over again in the film, but the son finally questions his dad about his behavior one night.
Yeah, he basically reveals that he knows none of what's in the book is true.
Yeah, like the son wants to believe his dad was this great man on the outside, but knows that was not the case. And the dad likes to hear from his son that, he was a great man and that he did make a difference, because that's all he really wants to hear, is that his son believes in him and really looks up to him. But there's the kind of peeling of the mask in the beginning when the son talks about a sort of massacre in Southeast Asia where the oil company that the father owns killed a bunch of people. And the son describes it in a quite graphic way, and the dad is horrified that the son believed that he would be a part of such a massacre. And he's like, that's not true, where did you get this information from? And then newspaper clippings are brought to the father, and he like straight away goes, oh, that's fake, it's not real, it's where do you get this, it's not true.
He was like, I condemned that.
The father really wants to believe he was a good person. And I think if you spend 25 years telling yourself you are a good person, that you did nothing wrong, then you'll start to believe it.
I think that's a massive thing that we're dealing with in the world as well, in the sense of cognitive dissonance. Like, none of us want to believe that we're bad people. And so we will talk ourselves round in circles as to why we don't do certain things. For example, I don't know, I guess one of the easiest examples is like swapping to like a plant-based diet, and how many excuses people can find for why they shouldn't do that. Throughout, this whole film, you have those spiraling kind of dilemmas, and
I think it's not dilemmas. I think it's just the guilt is showing from them, and they know that they're bad people, but they just can't, on the surface, tell themselves that they're bad people. Like, the music in this film is very interesting because musicals are usually about hope and optimism and people singing their inner dreams. Like in Annie, they sing the sun will come out tomorrow, and they're kind of positive about that. Whereas this, they are very much singing to kind of lie to themselves, to continue this denial or delusion that they have. The girl at the end of the film sings a song, Our Future is Bright. this is the kind of like denialism and delusion that the rest of the characters have, but the girl didn't have in the beginning of the film. But as she starts to grow with this family and starts to have children with this family, she has this kind of ability now to deny the truth and like sing, our future is bright, even though they're in a bunker, there's no end in sight. Like, the future is very much not bright. The future is very dark.
Very dark, especially when you're living underground.
It's just such an interesting take on the musical genre where they are lying to themselves, even though music is usually like the deepest desires of the heart. It's very much the delusion that comes out with this. And also, apparently they sang all the songs live.
That was very impressive.
I thought, no way did they, because they all had incredible singing voices.
They really did, actually.
And, I mean, all the musical numbers are incredible.
Yeah, you love a musical, so I'm not surprised that that was your take. I'm like I like La La Land and I like Mamma Mia kind of person. So, like, that was not my favourite part of the movie.
What about Michael Shannon's musical number when he sort of...
The dancing?
The dancing.
That I did appreciate. I liked when there was a bit of choreography and movement to it.
Yeah, within this, like, dark film, there is, like, a lot of whimsy and humour.
One question we did have about this film is it too nuanced? I think it's something that keeps coming up with each film we watch, is how each film addresses climate. Is it shown but not spoken about? Is it explicit? Is it more abstract? I think this is the first film we've watched where it is spoken about but not shown, and that's really interesting. But it also means, like I kind of said at the beginning, having that extra context, I felt really fortunate I had that opportunity. But if you're just an ordinary cinema goer who just is interested and, you know, is sitting there and thinking what's going on, maybe that's not super helpful.
Yeah, it feels like it should have had a character break in the middle of the film and be like, of course I knew how bad we were. Of course I knew that I was causing all of this. But you know what? I didn't care. I was rich. And that's the reason why we're here now. And sort of have that moment where you see the monster is revealed, but then it goes straight back to him being a caring dad, or the mother being, you know, a caring mother. There just needed a moment where an audience member can go, oh, okay, right, they are monsters.
Like, maybe you're sitting there questioning it and you just need that answer, maybe.
Yeah, you need that kind of visual cue to go, of course.
What I think makes this film feel really genuine in its like message and just the story itself is knowing that Joshua Oppenheimer actually gets the climate crisis as an issue, just from hearing him talk, but also knowing that, you know, as part of the like tour of this movie, like attended climate marches, and as I spoke about earlier, like did connect and get to understand the concept of rich people living in bunkers. And it isn't just this idea that he kind of enjoyed thinking about and was like, maybe I'll make a story about that. It was like, no, like he actually gets it. And that's just something that I can appreciate. We need people to be telling these stories who aren't just kind of doing it because it feels like the right time to talk about it.
And one of the things he mentioned in the Q&A is the idea of like collective action. He wants the whole world to come together and really sort out these problems. Otherwise we will be just individuals living in, well, I won't be an individual living in a bunker, I can't afford one, but the rich people will be the individuals living in the bunker, and the rest of us will just be trying to survive in a world which is on fire.
Yeah, we need to get out of like our mental bunkers essentially and get out of how we view each other and work together, because that is the solution at the end of the day.
Now, usually we would choose dystopia or utopia for a film, but today we wanted to switch it up.
So, as we had that experience of listening to Joshua Oppenheimer talk about the film, he believes we are living in post-apocalyptic times already, because the etymology of the word apocalypse comes from uncovering or revealing, and that I think is really interesting to think about when we kind of ask this question of what kind of film is it and what world is it portraying, because often we're like, is it apocalyptic because it's real? Like, we have all these questions, But he's kind of given us our answer. And the answer is, this is post-apocalyptic because we've already know what's happening. The big reveal is that fossil fuels are driving climate change, and we have that science to back it up. So it's kind of like, what are we doing with that knowledge that we are already in an apocalypse?
He's basically like answered the question we wanted to kind of solve with Dystopia and Utopia, because the idea behind it was that we saw so many reviews talking about these climate films as post-apocalyptic or dystopia or utopian, and we were never sure whether the word was correct for the film.
Yeah, it just didn't really feel right to us.
But now, with the understanding of what this is, this question shines with a new light.
Thank you, Joshua Oppenheimer, for giving us that perspective on our Dystopia Utopia segment. And now, how scorching are we talking?
I am going to say this is a 75 degrees. I thought it was a really interesting way to tell a climate story, which is a post-apocalyptic musical. I don't think we'll ever see another one like this. It's truly unique in its delivery. I think the director knocked it out the park. The cast knocked it out the park. It looked beautiful. And it also reminded me of another recent film that Tolly and I saw, which was Mickey 17. It feels like those two would be great companion pieces together. Like the sort of polar opposite of humanity, one going underground, one going up in space, but they felt very similar to me.
Yeah, they both do that thing of not revealing what's actually going on Earth.
Yeah, and if one of those creepers wanted to jump up and kill Michael Shannon or anyone in that film, it wouldn't have been too...
It wouldn't have been that strange to find them in the salt mine.
No, and I thought that's maybe the way it would have gone. I didn't think that the ending would just be them continuing to live. I thought maybe something would happen.
And some people might find that unsatisfactory, but each their own. My rating would be 81 degrees. I think, like you said, it's a one-of-a-kind film, and that's why it gets a few extra degrees from me. I thought it was also very beautiful. There are some moments that I really appreciated, which was just really satisfying. When a musical number, the lighting would change from like warm to cold, depending on what the song was saying. Just very clever things like that. And of course, the storyline with the dad, I think is really important that we have more films that shine a light on who is responsible for the climate crisis.
And also shout out to Michael Shannon, who is an incredible actor and one of my favourites.
Yeah, I was going to say, you actually really like Michael Shannon.
I do really like Michael Shannon. He's a very, very good actor.
What art would you hang in your bunker? Let us know over on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, YouTube, wherever you can find us. Our handles are in the description.
And thank you for listening to Lights Climate Action. Please remember to rate, review and subscribe.
And shout out to Mubi. We are very happy to come to more of your screening events in the future.
Or sponsor us. I am a paying member. Give me a free membership instead.
Jake also really wants a tote bag.
I love Mubi.
So, just putting it out there, guys. Just putting it out there. Thank you so much once again.
Bye.